for today. So thank you all for attending today's Lunch and Learn for the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County. My name is Sarah, and I'm the Administrative Support Coordinator for the League. Before we get started in introducing our two guest speakers and the guest topic, I just kind of wanted to go over some League announcements. We usually do these before every Lunch and Learn. And the biggest League announcement that we have, well, two things, I guess. Please go vote on April 4th if you are not already planning to do so. It's just 2 weeks away. So whether you have received your absentee ballot and you're trying to figure out how to get it there, you still have time to mail it back in. Otherwise, I probably intend on my husband and I, we got absentee ballots this election just because we have a 19-month-old son and we just don't know how it's going to happen and if we have time, and I just don't want to be rushing in and having to deal with that. So we plan on filling out the absentee ballots and then turning them into our city hall. So that's my voting plan. So vote April 4th. The next big announcement is the League's annual meeting. So once a year, the League has an annual meeting where we all get together. It can be members, non-members, and get together, not only have kind of like the annual business meeting, but then also there's a short program. The annual meeting is Wednesday, May 24th. And that starts at 5 p.m., goes until about 8:30. And that's going to happen at Summit Place, which is in the building where our office is located in West Dallas. So if you're familiar, Summit Place, it's basically like on 70th Street and Washington Street. So the address exactly is 6737 West Washington Street. So keep a lookout for that. May 24th, and we will be having guest speaker Anita Johnson. She will be speaking at the annual meeting. And an ask for the annual meeting, because Pat won't let me forget it, is to bring a pie for the annual meeting if you are able to. Pat, do we have 5 types of pies that we want to have people bring, or say whatever?
I am hoping that we can have our volunteers specify what type of pie they're going to bring so that we could get it to be a rank choice voting.
Oh, so no matter then how many.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So bring a pie of any kind. Awesome.
Thank you.
So again, May 24th. There will be a small fee for it. We don't know what the fee is going to be exactly, but we do keep it as small as possible because we want to
probably $25.
Probably around 25. Okay.
Yep.
Usually just to cover the cost of our food.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So without further ado, I don't want to waste too much time just because I want to make sure we have time for questions, any discussion. This should be a pretty intriguing program today, just because it is about fighting racism. And we, as the League of Women Voters, not only nationally and state, but also obviously our local league, we are committed to being an anti-racism organization and are doing what we can to spread our information to our membership, to the community, and basically how can the league be better at being actively anti-racist. So today we have Mary Delgado here and Althea Johnson. Washington?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's not
and they are here to talk about a couple of some programs and workbooks that they are going to talk about. I don't know enough about them to introduce them well enough. When I take it over to them, they can speak for themselves of who they are. Mary was talking about earlier, what makes her qualified, so to speak. But maybe even what got you into this line of work, or what brought you here today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for allowing us to present our programs to you. Well, Mary Delgado is my name. I have been wanting to do something like this for maybe 10 years. And so I'm going to blame it on God, because it was really his inspiration, who said to me, and really showed me how to put a program together. And so that was in 2018 and into 2019. So the program that we're going to talk about, the 9-month program, is started in 2019. And Pat is still with us, and she is in the 2022 group. There are 2 groups, and she's in one of them. And she, our 2 groups, 2022, are ending up in early April. And then we want to start a new group. We use April and May to recruit. And then we start new groups again in June. The biggest reason that this is me saying this, that I believe that we are now in this country, we are at a time of reckoning. And it's not just, we need to reckon with a whole lot of issues. However, I believe that race is at the core. And if race is not reckoned with by white people, the other issues are not going to get resolved. And so white people need to come to terms with their whiteness. And that's, we can talk about that later. And what their whiteness means for us, for them as a white people, but to Black people and people of color, it's not the same. And but changing white people's whiteness, is very painful and disorienting. However, there is no true change in anything unless there is pain and disorientation. All journeys, like therapy, you have to go through hard work and struggle. And I believe that this country has to do this now. I don't think that we white people have a choice. And so our program is one way to do this. So what Althea and I would like to do is we'll go through the 9-month program that we have for white people, white women. It's called Facing Racism, One White Woman at a Time. Then we'll end it, and we'll have questions or discussion. Then Althea and I will go and talk about another program that we have. There's more than one way to do this. And today we would like to show you the 2 ways that we have found that are effective. So Althea, do you want to say anything introducing you, or you want to wait?
Sure. I can just say my name's Althea Washington, and I was introduced to this idea by Mary. I was a pastor at a church, and we had small groups centering mostly around kind of Christian themes, Christian/justice themes. And Mary came to me and said, may I start a group of women, Black and white women, specifically dealing with race? And I said, yes, please. And that was years ago. And so then when Mary, and I think it was 2018, said, I have this idea, I thought, absolutely, because, it's important that I know that Mary as a white woman is going to have a different audience than I do, is going to come with some built-in credibility. And so the idea that, that she would proactively say, let's build a program in which I can be speaking to my people, I can get behind 100%. So I'm excited to talk about it. It's been going for a number of years. We've had, I don't even know, I should count up the number of women who've gone through it and have talked about the impact it's had on this life. So thank you for allowing us to be here to present.
Thanks. Thank you, Althea. I counted up all the people since 2019. It's 45.
45, okay.
45 women. Okay, I'd like to share my screen because it's easier to talk if you can see something, if I can find it. There it is. Okay, sorry about this. I mean, the scrolling. I started out, we don't use this book, but I started out today talking about, I think everybody knows Robin DiAngelo. She's famous for her book on white fragility. Well, she wrote another one more recently, and it's nice people, nice racism, how progressive white people perpetuate racial harm. And when I read through it, well, that's us, white people. We are nice white people. Most of us are progressive or liberal, and we want to do right in this world, and we want to create a more just world. But even with our niceness, we can perpetuate and continue racism. And so what I mentioned before, we need to be transformed and changed, but it takes a lot of time. And are we really transformed? Many of us white people go to lectures. We listen to Black people speak to us. We read Black authors. We watch Black movies. We like Black art. However, does any of that really, really transform or change our thoughts, our attitudes, our feelings toward Black people and people of color? My answer to that is no, it's not enough. This is the Facing Racism, One White Woman at a Time, tries to give women a chance to change over time, 9 months of time. It goes from June until like the end of March, like now, or early April. There are 18 sessions over 9 months. So it's every two weeks. We take December off for obvious reasons. Dana is another Black woman who, with Althea, also said to me, when I came to them with the idea, I had two ideas, race and white women, that was all. And Dana is another woman who said that, yes, very much she would support this. And so these, Dana and Althea come to us over these 18 sessions 4 times. June to April, each session is 90 minutes. There are 7 books. It started in 2019 with 8 women, and then 2020, this many, 2021, we had a national group. There were 5 different states and also a Milwaukee group. And then in 2022 are finishing up this right now. What we do in these sessions that is different from a book club. This is not a book club, even though, yes, we read books, but it's not the ordinary, usual thinking of a book club. Because whether you like the book or not, it doesn't make any difference. And if you don't like it, that's probably good, because it's saying something to you that you need to hear. And so what happens is you read, but it's emotion, and then you write. And it's emotional writing, not intellectual. And so what are the words that the author is saying to you individually? And how does it affect you emotionally, not just intellectually? We can learn a lot of history and a lot of dates. That's not what this group is about. And so at the next session, after you have written down your thoughts and your feelings about a particular author and what the author has said, when we come back to the next session, each one of us on Zoom, now it's easy, we put ourselves on mute, and each one reads her own thoughts to the group. And there is no, because everybody's on mute, it's easy. There's no commenting in between. So it's very safe and very non-judgmental. People can emote, and people can write, and people can say what it is they are feeling and thinking. And so this is what we do for, well, it's 9 months, 18 times. And what I'd like to do now, is stop the share. And is there, just open it up to discussion. If you have thoughts, if you have questions, let us know.
I do. Who are, is it you, Mary, and Althea? Are you the co-facilitators of this, or are they different individuals co-facilitating this group?
Okay. No, I co-facilitated because this is for white people. This is for women. Maybe Althea, you can answer.
Yeah, so the of the 9 months, the majority of the time, the women are meeting with Mary. So she's leading it in person. And when she initially talked about it, she thought, well, how will that be? You know, kind of what are my thoughts on it? And we've had a number of the participants say, hey, you know, we think Dana, who's another Black woman, as she mentioned, and Althea should be here each time. But the reality is that in America, we've outsourced racism. We see it largely as a people of color, as a Black people issue, right? Like we're better in the last few years, but not significantly better. We're better, certainly the way we look at it, but overall it's a problem that we are doing to them, to Black people, to people of color. And the reality is that it's an issue for all of us, and it's largely held by, unintentionally or intentionally, by white women. So the idea and the practice is during those 9 months, they are meeting with Mary. So these are white women with Mary. I believe the dynamic would change slightly where there are brown people in the room, where there are Black people in the room. Like, how honest can you really be? It takes time to build rapport. And so we don't want to have to build rapport. We want from day one to remove that barrier. So throughout 9 months, Mary is facilitating, and then Miss Dana and I join what we call chill nights, meaning we aren't during that time only looking at the book. Sometimes we talk about current events in the news. We might read articles and talk about it, or oftentimes women will have questions for us, and so we'll be able to address them. It's amazing to me, and yet it makes sense to me that for some of the women, maybe many of the women, like, we are the only non-white relationship in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, they're doing it with each other, but we're stepping in. Good question.
Okay. No, that definitely answers it, and it kind of piggybacks off of another question I was going to ask too, just about because I had attended there's a YWCA workshop that they do, and I know that they have 2 different ones, and I can't remember which one I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was for 6 weeks, and I think it was like an hour, 2 hours each time.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe it was called the Conversations on Race, and I forget the other one that they do. And that was a mixed room, so to speak. It was Black and white individuals, and I don't know. I guess I liked that fact. So and I guess part of it too is that 6 weeks is a lot shorter period of time than, you know, it was 6 sessions, I should say, in 3 months maybe, whereas 9 months, it's a more longer of a commitment and that sort of thing too. I guess what I'm maybe trying to ask too is if it's a room full of white women, is that going to be beneficial, I guess?
That's a good question.
You know what I'm trying to say? Because
I think you're saying, like,
that it's like,
how can our perspective change if there's not somebody here who has a lived experience?
Correct, right. However, I also know too that it's like, I don't want you know, the one or two persons of color in the room to be the expert or the one that has to for everything and give so much of themselves. So,
and I think that naturally happens. And so I'd say that programs that have mixed groups are good. That is also a really beautiful way to do that. What we do is, it's less about it. The way the work happens is through education. So it's through hearing the voices in the book. It's through understanding the perspective, digging deep into history or whatever the book is calling them to. But the real work is not intellectual. It's not, I'm learning this, or I hear that perspective, or interesting. It's really like, what is it I carry into this situation?
okay.
In what ways am I a carrier? Am I a messenger for racism? In other words, there are few places, I think, in life, particularly for white people, where they have to face, like, what do I honestly think? Not what should I say, not I don't want to hurt, but like, what do I honestly think? And if I'm faced with how we got here through the 9 months, right? And that's just a smidgen of what's out there. But if I'm faced with that, and if I don't get to deflect into hearing or learning or experiencing through somebody or dealing with empathy, if instead I have to realize, wait a minute, how does this land with me? Then people start to think about how we were raised and what we believe and what we experience today. And so this is less an audio tape than a mirror. And because the best work is done when people are honest with themselves, it's easiest for people to get there when you know, like, we as humans we open up easier when we feel less judged. And so we recognize that people who are coming to this program at some point realize, racism is bad. At minimum, they're there. Many women have been doing this work in some way. And so we don't in any way want to thwart that by them coming into a room and thinking they either have to perform subconsciously or consciously or cater to our feelings, etc. So that's why, and you're right, those other programs are beautiful also.
Mm-hmm. Right. That answers it. Thank you. I think the emphasizing the not intellectual, but the emotional, I think that gives a really good example to help me put it into context.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah.
Okay, I just read a question in the, does the group conversation discuss unconscious bias and how to uncover what those may be? The easy answer is yes, absolutely. That is a lot of what it is we talk about. But I just want to back up a little bit. Sarah, your question is good. This is my belief as a white person living in this country for all these years. I'm looking out my window right now and I see a bunch of houses. I live in Lenox Heights, like 64th and Burleigh, Lisbon, Appleton, that area. So I'm looking out, it's half and half, half black, half white, homeowners and renters. But the white people, I've lived here for 35 years. I know a lot of the white people who live here. These people, and I'm going to say that way, they have no concept of what whiteness has been for them. They have no concept of being white and having any kind of privilege, having any kind of benefits. They simply do not know. And I'm saying I didn't know. I grew up. And I'm saying that white people, and this is my belief, live in a bubble. We live in a myth. We have been told a story that is not true. Mm-hmm. And our history books, our parents, our grandparents, whatever. And this is not just me. I mean, I do believe this, but this isn't just me saying this. And so I knew, okay, I'm retired. I don't want to sit around, have lunch with my friends and play cards in the afternoon. So I decided, I had to do something, and I just prayed. And this particular 9 months has proven effective with women we white women, we need to change. Yes, should there be white men? Absolutely. My reasoning for starting White Women is because I understand white women. I don't understand white men. I mean, not in the sense of going through this kind of, to me, white men have a whole different set of barriers than we do as white women. Again, these are my ideas. You know, you can say, no, I don't agree, fine. But this is how, I mean, these are some of the underpinnings of this program. Another way we talk about it is, here we are now, say in June, we want to be over here. I can never do this right. We want to be over here. This is how we think about race now, but we know there's something wrong. There's just something wrong in this country, period. And so we want to be over here. Well, we can't get here by a lecture or like I said, reading books without going the belly of the beast. We have to go through that hard time of changing. We got to change in order to get over here. And I went through the YWCA, thank you. I went through their program. It was excellent. And yes, it was men and women, 30 people, right before COVID. So we were still meeting personally. And yeah, it's excellent. It costs a lot of money. It was $250, right. Which is fine. I mean, okay, but is that enough time to change? Do people really, really change? I'm going to say no. You can't. Think of the times. I mean, even in your own life, we have gone through different phases and different times of transformation. And if we truly want to change, it takes time. 9 months is very nice to think about for women because we birth babies in 9 months. And we start in July with this program. We end up now in spring, in Easter and New Life. And women come out of the program with, I'm going to say it, just new life and a new way of thinking about racism, thinking about race in their own lives, and having really kind of an action plan that they are going to live their lives differently.
Awesome.
I think that takes care of the chat question, right? Or do you, that was Melissa, do you have another question, or does, you just asked, does the group conversation talk about unconscious bias? Yes, it does. We talk about it a lot because that is where, that's where Robin DiAngelo is coming from. We don't know. We white people, we don't know. We are truly dumb when it comes to this.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
One way I think about it, I mean, there are many components to it. So I want to be clear that earlier I talked about it not being intellectual. And part of it is history. So some of the books talk about kind of understanding like how we even, one of the books talks about understanding how we even got to the place where we identify a group of people as white. And then we read Ibram X. Kendi's book. So there is intellectual, like there is knowledge. Yet I kind of like right now I'm learning Italian and I'm learning it on my own. And so I have family members who are Italian. So that's kind of helpful. And yet, I kind of think of this group as they are learning a new language. Because it isn't just, I know there is racism and that is bad for other people, but it's understanding how do I need to learn this? What are the ways it impacts me? And that's going to be different than different people. But it's kind of shifting the whole idea of racism. It's not outsourced to others. It isn't that it was bad in our history. It's that I was raised and shaped in this same system. And then by virtue of being an American, I help perpetuate things. And so it really is ideally giving people another lens. Helping people kind of see where it is, right? Like once you learn something, you can see it more. You know, when you're looking for a car, you see that car everywhere. And so in an ideal world, it isn't just we want things to be better, but my hope is that ideally, and I continue to work on this with myself, but like, where does it show up? Because what America has done really well is give this beautiful image of a land with opportunity and a land that allows people to be who they can be. And we do so with this subversive other agenda. So we just want, if nothing else, for people to see, like, where do I need to question? I would say everywhere, but, and hopefully give people language that isn't just the kind of common narrative. We hear that often, that's so disquieting, but it's really important. What other thoughts or questions are there about? Pat has gone through it.
Yes, Pat had to leave. She's on another Zoom meeting, actually, right? So she had to leave at 12:12.
Sure.
Anyway, she, yes, she is in a group that is just finishing up right now.
Oh, Liz, you're still muted. I could see.
Okay, I had to go in and come back. Okay, blah, blah, blah. All right. What are some of the changes that you've seen in thinking/behavior?
That's very good. I mean, thank you for asking that, because that's very nebulous in a sense. And what I see and again, this is all on Zoom. And so when I'm looking at all the faces, what I see through these 9 weeks, probably about month 4, 5, 6, people no longer, the women no longer, let's see, how can I say this? They have come to the realization of what it means to be white in this country. I know that sounds weird, or it sounds nebulous, or it sounds ethereal, but until we white people understand this and know that we have been living a lie and living in a myth and a bubble, that takes a while for people to understand, but they do. And they realize that their lives now will be different, and that they will now face racial discussions, racial topics in well, first of all, a very different way, and also the idea of being a true anti-racist. And so each woman experiences this in her own way. For me, just listening to them, we do have an evaluation that we sent out. I sent it out just this week. And so they'll be able to express themselves more that way. I know, Elizabeth, that's a very good question. And that's what many, many times, this is what we hear. Well, how have they changed? Go ahead, Althea.
No, I'm sorry.
I was going to pick on Althea, though. Also, can you incorporate this into what you're saying?
Yeah.
Pun intended. Aren't you preaching to the choir?
I think so, because it is self-selected, but I'd say the choir is just learning. So yes, in the sense that these are folks who recognize something already, and yet that does not in any way mean they're equipped, fully equipped. Like I think about this, and I talk about this, that in all of our nation, like in the entire history of our nation, not one day has there been a different shift in favor. like regardless of what day, we can say, okay, well, let's figure out who is most favored and who is least favored in the area of medicine, in the area of job, in the area of like any metric. That has never changed. And so like that doesn't happen except that it is literally baked into everything we do. And so I agree with you that these are folks who are bought into the idea, but being bought into the idea and no longer being a conduit is very different, because we have always, or maybe not always, but I would say the majority of our time, there have been well-meaning white people who are even willing to put, whether they were abolitionists or whether they were willing to march. We've always had well-meaning white people who will stand up and say, this is wrong, and yet it continues, because it isn't enough to work outside the system. It is the system itself. And so, yes, the answer is yes, and still, that isn't enough. That in each generation, we hear people say, hey, I'm really excited about the future because these young people, and I would argue there is no evidence of that. Every generation has been more focused on justice than the last. And yet that has not ended it. And so I would argue we need something more than what we're doing. And that's not to say that what we've done is wrong. I think we need like all of it. Like, to answer your earlier question, kind of what I see, and I'll be honest with you, it isn't enough. Like, to me, it doesn't feel enough. I don't leave the 9 months feeling like, yes. I always leave feeling hopeful, but also like, oh, will this stick? Because I think it takes all of it. But I have heard the conversations that are encouraging anyway are, I hear people talking about, I have a new language. I talk about that often, that we need to have a language about it at minimum. And so I do hear people talking, either saying like, I'm getting used to it, or I have a language, I can have conversations differently. Or there are people who talk about wanting to adopt a language to invite people into the perspective or into some of the materials, or people saying, what can I do as an individual? And so we talk about, well, money talks. So who is building your homes? Who are you having to educate your children? Who is your doctor? Who are your providers, et cetera? So some of it is very practical. Who are you getting your goods and your services from? What organizations are you connected to? What people of color are you following? Because one of the fallacies in America is that we've kind of outsourced our credibility. We've said, hey, the people you need to listen to are, and I would argue that the people we need to be listening to are the people who have been in this fight for generations, many of whom aren't even educated, many of whom have raised families, and they're the people on the porches. In addition to all of the authors and the artists and the lecturers and the educators that have been saying this forever. So we do talk about kind of practical, like there's a challenge to adopt credibility of people that maybe before you would have said, yeah, but they don't quite know. In other words, kind of all of this has to shift. We hear people talking about relationships are changing, or at least, we hear people saying, this is a challenge. I'm in a different place than I was with my spouse, with my wife or my husband. So yeah, I similarly always want to be thinking, this doesn't matter until people are fully safe, and that is not today. And yet also, I don't know how to change everything at once, but this can be one of those things. And my prayer, my hope, my belief, my faith says, I believe in a God who has far more foresight than I. And so while to me it is not enough, I have to believe that this is one of the things on a journey and a path and a tapestry that can help us get to where we need to be. It's not the only thing, but I do appreciate the depth that it challenges and it calls women to. And that I appreciate, because just by virtue of the way it's designed, Like women show up, and it's not just let me riff off the top of my head, serendipitously speak, but it's here's what I've presented. In other words, I've spent time with the material and myself, and here's how it met me and what that means to me. And then once that's, once everybody has their uninterrupted time to share, then there's crosstalk, then there's, clarification or questions or opinions. And I appreciate that in order to participate, you have to first participate with yourself.
Mhm.
Does that help, Elizabeth?
Oh, yes, that's fine. I'll let somebody else put in a question before I do something else.
Oh, no. Okay. I'm not going to add anything to what Althea just said, because what she said answers the question perfectly. But I'm going to go back to, would we do this with white men? And the answer is yes, we are talking about it. And we're also talking about having mixed groups, white men and white women. And so that's all in the future. However, right now, we're going to, in 2023, we'd like to have 2 groups of white women. So if anybody else does have a question, or it doesn't sound like it, Elizabeth, you have another?
Yes, I do. It's a question comment. Althea.
Yes.
I'm told through Mary Sussman that we have the same hometown.
I remember her. Oh, that's you, Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes. So where I'm going with this is one of my teaching assistants, who is now deceased, but I'm never going to forget it. He said to me that as Blacks in Madison, we lived in a utopia.
Yeah.
And we were the product of, I'm just trying to get the sleeping pill sickness.
Interesting. Okay.
And unfortunately, in many respects, I found out, and I'm dating myself, okay, but that he was right. Because I didn't have my first, I'm going to call it, uncomfortable confrontation until I was, I want to say 19, and in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
And I was just there for a fellowship. But unbeknownst to me, I was living near Southern Methodist University in an all-white neighborhood. And I was subletting. My landlord, who I had never met, was concerned that the property values would go down because of my presence.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 Thank you for that. Let me just interrupt. I know, Althea, you want to say something good, but Melissa has another question in the chat. For you, Elizabeth, I think, what does sleeping pill sickness mean?
I will define it this way. In Madison, where I was raised in South Madison, and it's not just South Madison, but we were an integrated community. People got along. You might have one family who would fight against another family, but that's because you were representing your family, not the color of your skin. So we grew up not entirely, okay, but going many places without having our race slapped in my face. But as I'm talking to you, I'm also remembering we used to have this thing called a twerp dance where a female would invite the guy. And I was a freshman. I've always been fast, okay, fast and slow, okay. But I asked a senior to go with me. So as part of this, I went over to pick him up. And Althea, he lived near St. Mary's Hospital.
Oh, sure. Yeah, by the zoo.
So when I went and I was in class with his sister, okay, but again, he's older. So his father met me at the door when I came in, and I don't know why my date wasn't ready, but he wasn't. So the father, see, I haven't thought about this for years. He took the time to talk to me. And this is probably one of my first dates, okay? So I'm not thinking about marriage or anything, but this man lectured me on how our relationship would never work. He said, you would be like the Withers family, white mother, black father, mixed children. And he said, not accepted by anybody in the community. That just bowled me over.
Right. But what is that? The sleeping pill sickness is.
You think that everybody is going to get along. You don't dislike someone because their skin is different. You might dislike them because they have a nasty mouth or they smell bad. But you don't frame an opinion just based on the outer appearance. That's why with my landlord in Texas, my first thought was, we've never even had a conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I growing up in Madison, I agree with that. It wasn't overt racism. It wasn't overt bias. Like Madison is a very nice, friendly town. In fact, it's considered and always has been really liberal and really open. It's the seat of the government, the capital is there, and the university is there. And so there are all kinds of people. And so it isn't something you see. It isn't something you often hear. Sometimes you do. I mean, I certainly did, but I agree with you. And yet, you know, the way it landed on me was in Ibram Kendi's book, he talks about uplift suasion, kind of that I, like in my experience, it was very subtle and nobody intended this, I'm sure. But in order to get along, you essentially, you know, you behave white, and it was never overt, but it came across in what was affirmed, whether it's language, whether it's people. I mean, I also grew up in an area, and I don't know if you did too, Elizabeth, where I was one of very few children of color growing up in Madison, certainly in my early years. So yeah, I mean, looking at that, it didn't feel really restrictive based on race. And yet we know that it is not outside the United States, you know, and so the ways racism showed up there was different than in another area. But yeah, I can relate to that. I still love Madison and, you know, yeah, it doesn't mean it wasn't problematic, right? That's like our families. I love my family. And yet, yeah, there are probably some things we could do better. That's the same.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing those issues up and for explaining the sleeping pill, sleeping pill
sickness.
But you know,
sickness. I got it.
Part of the utopia. Everything is perfect.
Right. Yeah,
I understand. I mean, okay, and that's perfect.
Madison has repeatedly been chosen as one of the best mid-sized cities in the nation.
Yes.
Right?
It is.
And so to Elizabeth's earlier question, are we preaching to the choir? Because there are many folks who are from that milieu. I say yes, and yet still. I mean, I know I can say me as a person of color, I have to pay attention to how I think about myself. And so if I continue to see ways in which racism creeps into my life, certainly anybody who does not get to walk around in brown and black skin has work to do as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I'm just looking at the time, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. We just talked about the 9-month program. But Althea and Dana and one other woman and I wrote this. It's called Dismantling Racism, a Workbook of Introspection for White People. It's on Amazon. The workbook is based on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, well, this is a quote from the book itself. So the reason we're showing this is that you can buy it. You work it in a group. You can work it by yourself, or you can work it in a group. I can't open the pages here, but there are questions for each step. And you actually write the answers right into the workbook. And so what we're saying here is that we have a 9-month program. That's one path for white people to come to terms with their racist thoughts and feelings and actions and then do something. The workbook is another path that has the same goal. And so it's 2 different programs that we have worked on. And so I just, if you're interested, this is another way to work, well, for white people to work through their own individual racism. So that actually is the end of our, the 2 parts that we wanted to let everybody know. Oh, there is one other thing. Wait a minute, I should go back to this. I put my information here, my name and email and my phone number, in case people are interested, especially in the 9-month program. And if you email me and say that you're interested in more information, what I do is I will email you back and say, good. And then I have a one-on-one Zoom meeting with every woman before we start in June. So this is my information here. And so, Sarah, thank you. I think we're almost to 1 o'clock.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for coming and telling us what's available, because I think so often, I guess I can speak for myself as a white woman, right? You look for, well, what can I take advantage of? What can I do to learn more? What's the next step even? So I think that this is a really good way for folks to do that next step. And just so everyone knows, if you don't already know, the session is being recorded. We do record all of our lunch and learns, and I post them on our website on the League. So I did put that link in the chat box below, but it's basically just our website, lwvmilwaukee.org/lunch-and-learn. And then I also put in our YouTube page as well, because that's where the photo or the videos are actually posted. And not only do we have the lunch and learns there, but we have anything else that we've recorded. So we have public issues forums. I believe there was maybe last year's annual meeting that was held virtually, things like that. So check those out if you ever miss anything. I'm also intending on putting this recording and linking it into our weekly update emails. So we do weekly update emails every Thursday morning. Membership can know for sure that this was taking place, and that, hey, this is available to you. And I will also link Mary, Althea, I'll link your information for the programs, the books, and then Mary, your contact information that you provided.
Good. Okay, thank you. That sounds like it gets out to a whole lot of people.
It does.
Well, that's a good thing.
And I think we have a pretty good open rate, as they say. So,
Althea and I gave this presentation last year at this time to this group, Lunch and Learn. And there were 5 league members signed up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's really good to know.
Elizabeth or somebody said Mary Sussman. She also is in one of the groups right now.
Okay. Yep. I was gonna
chat.
Thanks, Liz.
Oh, off to exercise. Good. Me too. Me too. That's where I'm going. I'm going to the Y.
Thank you so much for the info.
Welcome.
And thank you. Thanks, Althea.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.